Mortal Kombat, the newest film based on a video game, came out last month at the end of April, and is currently the subject of debate among fans of the franchise whether or not the film should be revered as its 1995 counterpart with the same name. I grew up in the 90s and was about 5 years old when the original film came out, and I loved it. Given the track record of video game movies between now and then, I consider the first film to be one of the better made movies in the genre, and we don't talk about Annihilation. That being said, I had the chance to watch the newest one, and honestly, I liked it too. I think it's a breath of fresh air, considering the movies we had to deal with in the 90s and 2000s such as Wing Commander, Tomb Raider, Street Fighter, Resident Evil, Tekken, House of the Dead. Okay, before you guys drown me out with your boos, Capcom literally had no excuse to make Street Fighter deviate so far away from the source material when they literally co-produced it and approved every decision that went into making the movie. And while some of the Resident Evil films aren't that bad, it is one of my favorite horror video game franchises, and I really can't see why making a slasher type of thriller set in a mansion was so hard to make when that was literally what the first game was about. Today, in my analysis, opinion, and theory, we'll be looking at both Mortal Kombat movies to ask, is either film really that bad, looking at the pros and cons of both, and how faithful they are to the lore. But first, before we can prepare for the tournament at hand, we have to make sure we know how to properly block and defend before jumping in the ring with Goro. Click on the link in the description to get a NordVPN 2-year plan with a huge discount. Here's why you need to secure yourself with NordVPN. You can use it to unlock Netflix and your favorite entertainment websites that are not available here in the US. You can connect up to 6 devices at the same time with one account. There is no data logging whatsoever, and it works even in China. If you are out and about and using public Wi-Fi networks such as airports and coffee shops, NordVPN will protect you with double data encryption for increased anonymity. With encryption like that, it's simply a flawless victory. NordVPN works with Windows, Mac OS, Linux, iOS, and Android. It has a Chrome extension which is very user-friendly and unlimited bandwidth. If you're not happy with it for any reason, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. NordVPN won the Best VPN Award and Best VPN Awards for 2020 by one of the most trusted experts, VPN Mentor. It's also the only VPN to get all the green checks on PC Mag. Even fatalities need to use a block as an input to pull it off, showing how important defense is. So use the link in the description to get yourself secured with NordVPN. Shout out to NordVPN for giving me the opportunity to be an affiliate. Before we get into the video, there are spoilers for both films, so you have been warned. I'm not going to recap either film as we'll get straight to the point and analyze the films in general. Also, I will be comparing them to the original timeline that compromises of the first Mortal Kombat game up until Armageddon. I know, but that is the timeline. If it wasn't for this timeline, there'd be no Mortal Kombat today. First, let's talk about the elephant in the room about the 1995 incarnation, no gore. Mortal Kombat is known for its brutal fatalities, whether it be in the original timeline of the games or the current timeline of MK9 through MK11. Mortal Kombat was literally one of the reasons that the Entertainment Software Rating Board, or better known as the ESRB, was established because of the controversy caused by Mortal Kombat, Night Trap, and Doom. So why was the gore absent? Well, the original draft of the movie did have it, along with stronger language that would have given the film an R rating. However, because of the deal struck with New Line Cinema, it was forced to be revised to deliver a PG-13 movie to target teenagers. While there are some minor cases of blood, the closest thing we have to gore are scenes involving Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Reptile, notably their defeats and Sub-Zero's fight against a lesser henchman. That brings us to the next point. How faithful is the story? With movie adaptations, whether the source is a video game or a book, liberties are taken typically for creative purposes. Given the other movies around the time of Mortal Kombat's release such as Super Mario Bros. And Street Fighter, the storyline is pretty faithful to the first game, as the movie adapts elements from both Mortal Kombat 1 and 2, and is one of the reasons why I like it so much. Combatants are invited to the island to participate in Mortal Kombat, where if Earthrealm loses one more time, Shao Kahn will be able to invade and take over. Just like in the game's canon, Liu Kang befriends Johnny Cage and Sonya Blade. Goro is the reigning champion, having defeated the great Kung Lao 500 years ago, and as a last resort, Shang Tsung steps in for the final match. As mentioned before, there are some deviations with this film, the first major one being Sub-Zero and Scorpion working for Shang Tsung. These two are noted for their legendary rivalry stemming from the video games, and the rivalry is only mentioned briefly in passing in the film by Shang Tsung. In the original canon, Scorpion was killed by Sub-Zero and got his revenge at the end of the tournament, while Sub-Zero was actually contracted to kill Shang Tsung by the Lin Kuei, which didn't happen for obvious reasons, and the fact that Liu Kang defeated Shang Tsung, forcing him to flee Outworld. speaking of Shang Tsung, during the tournament, his appearance was that of a frail old man, despite still being a powerful sorcerer with the ability to consume souls. The filmmakers decided to go with his youthful appearance to reflect his appearance of Mortal Kombat 2. Another change from the game, though still one of my favorite fights, that instead of Liu Kang exploiting Goro's overconfidence and defeating him, Johnny Cage is the one to do this with his patented split punch. Funny enough, this would also go on to be somewhat retconned and referenced in one of my favorite personal Mortal Kombat games, Shaolin Monks. The climax of the film also takes place in Outworld, but again, this was planned as an element and nod to Mortal Kombat 2, along with the inclusion of Kitana and Jax in the film. Another nice touch is the fight with Reptile, which is a nod to his status as a secret character in the first game. Last but not least, as far as the story, and I had touched on this briefly, the fights are different compared to the original canon. The only canon fights that we truly know of that occurred in Mortal Kombat 1 are Liu Kang vs Goro, Liu Kang vs Shang Tsung, and Scorpion vs Sub-Zero, though the last one could be written off as an ambush with Scorpion able to seek his revenge. So Kano, Scorpion, Reptile, Goro, and Shang Tsung's deaths don't happen, as they would set up the events of Mortal Kombat 2, but again, this decision was probably made for the movie's own canon. That brings us to the pros and cons of the film, and does it hold up today? As far as the last question, I think it does. The fact that it is one of the earliest video game movies to not only stick to the lore, but also be so well made at the time is, well, excellent. The fight sequences are amazing, the atmosphere fits so well, and of course we can't forget about the iconic theme song used for the movie, as well as the rest of the soundtrack score. The portrayals are iconic and even led to some changes in the game's canon. For example, Trevor Goddard's portrayal of Kano led to the character being retconned to being Australian instead of being originally American with Japanese descent. Raiden also originally had black hair in the canon, but after the film's portrayal by Christopher Lambert, and future installments he's noted to have long white hair. And I think that we can agree that Kerry and Lyndon's portrayal of their respective characters are just classic, and set the standard of how the characters would be portrayed in future games. And of course we could go down the list of the cast, but there's also a reason why some of these actors and actresses reappeared as DLC in Mortal Kombat 11. We also have to give mad props for this incarnation to have an Asian lead, something not commonly seen in mainstream releases at the time. One of the film's cons would be the CGI being so dated today, but at the time was amazing to see, at least from my perspective when the film came out. Of course, the fact that there was no gore, given that the film was based on a franchise notorious for it, was also a con as well, but as mentioned before, that was a studio decision. Goro's puppet was great at the time, but not as beefy as one would imagine, considering his appearance in the first game. Overall, Paul W.S. Anderson did a great job with this film and did the franchise justice. That being said, let's talk about the 2021 film, also called Mortal Kombat, and I will start by addressing the elephant in this room, Cole Young. I will say that I was not completely a fan of his character, given the fact that most of the film, he had difficulty fighting like he once used to, being one of the last to unlock his Arcana, and suddenly beating Goro did not make sense at first. Cole is the descendant of Scorpion's bloodline, and his purpose, as explained in the beginning of the movie, was to unite the champions. It didn't say he would defeat Shang Tsung or save Earthrealm solely. Let me explain. The reason his Arcana took so long to unlock is because it wasn't about his past, who he was, or defending himself, but rather defending his family, to avoid the same fate that his ancestor, Hanzo Hasashi, better known as Scorpion, fell victim to thanks to Sub-Zero. Cole's Arcana, despite how goofy it looked, was there to shift his fighting style from purely offense to also incorporate some defense and absorb the kinetic energy from his opponent to counterattack with, and to either defend or save his family. This is also confirmed later in the 2v1 fight where Hanzo realizes Cole is doing something he could not do, save his family. Cole is able to not only break the cycle of the Hasashi bloodline, but also free Scorpion from his torment and allow him to seek revenge on Sub-Zero. Now, could the film still be written without Cole in it? I think yes, there is a possibility that it could have gone down that way, but I will say that the way the film concluded, it did not make Cole out to be Earthrealm's champion, but rather someone who is able to bring the champions together, and I'll touch on this topic a little later. And honestly, I think that's still better than inventing a character just to have him be killed off by Goro. That brings us to the canon. How faithful is the movie to the game's story? Like the 1995 movie, pretty faithful in its aspects, despite incorporating elements from many games. The fact that there is gore and seeing some classic fatalities recreated today is just, well, excellent. The film has so many intricate details, whether it's dialogue, imagery, or visuals that were just natural and didn't feel forced at all. Some of my friends that have also seen it and aren't familiar with the lore as much as I am also liked it for this reason, as the movie was easy to follow even if they weren't hardcore Mortal Kombat fans. The fact that they added characters with pretty faithful costumes for the most part, such as Reiko, Kabal, Natara, and Mileena, was also a very nice touch. I do also want to clear some things up about the portrayals of a few characters, namely Liu Kang, Raiden, and Jax. Now don't get me wrong, Robin Shou did an excellent job of Liu Kang, and canonically, Liu Kang did have a younger brother, as mentioned in the SNES version of the video game's canon, though named Chao instead of Chan. I don't think people give Ludi enough credit for his portrayal as Liu Kang because the character has always been a Shaolin monk raised in the Order of Light and represented the White Lotus Society in the game's tournament. The fact that they went so far as to mention Bo Raicho and the Wuxi Academy really shows how close they were trying to stay to the game, not to mention Liu Kang's brother-like relationship with Kung Lao, which is hinted on in most games and elaborated more in Shaolin Monks. I think also with the fact that Shang Tsung killing Kung Lao gives Kang even more of a drive to go after him in the second film's tournament, as we know canonically Liu Kang is a 4-time Mortal Kombat champion, known for defeating Shang Tsung, Goro, Shao Kahn, and Shinnok. As far as Raiden, what a lot of people don't seem to realize is that canonically, he was there during the first Mortal Kombat tournament, but was there to watch over Earthrealm's greatest, not necessarily fight. He didn't even fight until Mortal Kombat 2, 3, and Deadly Alliance, but even then, he had to give up his godhood in order to do so, especially during Deadly Alliance when the Elder Gods refused to step in after Liu Kang's death. And as far as Jax, yes, I understand that the initial bionic arms aren't the greatest, and I'm not excusing how they wrote his character, but rather explaining the reason that this was done as part of the Arcana storyline. Not to mention the way he lost his arms is a reference to one of his first fatalities, and in the game's canon, he actually had bionic arms way before Mortal Kombat 2, but chose not to fight with them during that time, as it was retconned in the horrendous Special Forces. God, that game. Some of my favorite nods are Bi-Han removing his blue armor and becoming Noob Saibot for a brief amount of time, the scenery of Outworld, and Kano's fatality. I think they did a good job with the Arcana element of the movie's canon to explain how each fighter has supernatural abilities, especially when it comes to Sonya, Kano, Jax, Liu Kang, and others. And while this Shang Tsung may seem a bit off, I do like how powerful they made his character seem, especially with how quickly he was able to defeat Kung Lao. I think some of the cons of this movie would be Sonya and Jax's friendship not being fully explained, or could have been fleshed out a little bit more, some of the attires not being canon, but then again, as I said before, movies often take liberties, and definitely the absence of Johnny Cage. However, one possibility that they can go with the future of these films that has been proposed so far is that the second movie would be the tournament, a la MK2, and the third film would be post-tournament, similar to the Mortal Kombat 3 Invasion storyline. There is also talks of a possible Johnny Cage spin-off and standalone film, which we could see what he was up to during the first film's storyline. Overall, this movie was a breath of fresh air, and with how they treated the game's lore to incorporate as much possible in the movie, it shows they really had respect for the franchise. I'm looking forward to the next installment and hoping it would be way better than what Annihilation... Wait, I forgot that movie doesn't exist. Here are my final thoughts on both films. It's not really fair to compare the two to say which one is better, as I believe they're both good in their own right. And it's also like comparing apples to oranges, given the circumstances of 95's no-gore policy as part of their deal, and what Mortal Kombat 2021 was able to get away with. They were also made almost 30 years apart, so filmmaking has definitely come a long way since then, especially when it comes down to the evolution of special visual effects. If you haven't seen either one, give them a chance and you may be surprised. All in all, I'm excited to see what the future brings us in terms of Mortal Kombat films. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What do you like about either film? If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, liking the video, commenting, and sharing it with your friends, as these all help my channel grow. Also, if you want to directly support the channel, become a member for 99 cents and enjoy access to exclusive perks such as the VIP Discord, behind the scene pictures, member only live streams, and more. Thanks for watching, stay beautiful, stay awesome, and we'll catch you around next time.